my name is Kevin, and I'm doing gun control laws. Now, how many people here have heard about the Columbine or Virginia Tech massacre? Now, how many of you were affected by these tragedies? Or, every year in America, there are 15,000 murders, and 10,000 of them were committed with a gun. That's 67%, meaning more than half the people murdered were killed by a gun. This is an overwhelming statistic that truly shows the negative effects of guns on our population. Another statistic is that out of the 8 million violent crimes committed in 2001, 3 million of those crimes were committed with a firearm. With the loose gun laws that regulate guns, the fear of your neighbor having a gun, and the dangerous temptation to use a gun in confrontations, who feels safe now? In my opinion, the rise in gun ownership is dramatically making the U.S. a more dangerous place to be. If there were a decrease in gun ownership, it would negatively affect the rising statistics of violent crime in the U.S. And if there were fewer guns in circulation, there is less potential for the deadly use of force in confrontation. My first point is, because more people have weapons these days, there is a fear that people will actually use them. In 2000, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms reported that 7% of armed career criminals obtain firearms from licensed gun shops. This shows that criminals can bypass the laws that we have and still go buy a gun without any hassle. Many citizens are aware of this, and this causes a great fear in the minds of Americans, because for all we know, the person sitting next to you on the bus could very well have a gun in his pocket. Surveys from the Bureau of Justice Statistics show that in a federal prison, 80% of inmates had illegally received their weapon from an illegal vendor. Knowing this large percent is perhaps the scariest thought, for it is easier for a criminal to get a gun illegally than legally. When these criminals buy these illegal guns, there are no background checks either, proving that anyone can get a gun. Another cause of fear is the types of weapons that are available for citizens to buy these days. These weapons range from automatic machine guns to rifles and shells that can even pierce police body armor. How scary is it knowing that the people who are there to protect us can be killed just as easily as us, even with their high-tech equipment? Secondly, every year we will hear about accidents that lead to death because of guns. Because more guns are readily available, accidents will be more prone to occurring to innocent lives. Statistics from the book Gun Violence show how in the U.S. over 40% of households contain a gun, showing that it is not uncommon to have a gun in the house. This is a scary thought, that almost half of Americans these days have guns, which means that their kids and everyone in their household is exposed to the gun too. The Bureau of Justice Statistics Firearms show that if there was a gun in the household, that the children present were 57% more likely to hurt themselves or another person with it. Basically, when an adult brings a gun into their house, they automatically are endangering everyone that lives there with them. A perfect example is in 2007 when a 3-year-old boy named William McAnuel shot himself in the head after finding his father's gun in his room. Accidents like this will continue happening if we don't do anything about it. Finally, throughout American history, various laws have been passed to try to regulate gun laws and make the U.S. safer with guns. However hard they try, though, the gun laws are still ineffective in fully discouraging violence with guns. For example, the Gun Control Act of 1968 strictly has rules for gun owners and regulates who is allowed to buy guns. This law may restrict gun owners from a lot of things, but it still does not stop crime from the people who buy guns illegally. Another law passed in 1933 is the Brady Bill, which requires any person who is buying a gun to have a background check. Once again, this law is not helping make the U.S. a safer place, instead regulating the law-abiding gun owners more. The last law, called the National Firearms Act, passed in 1934, puts a tax on the shipment of guns across state lines. In no way does this law protect any citizen from guns. It simply helps the government make more money from taxes. These are the 3 largest laws passed in the U.S. on guns, and neither help protect the citizens from guns. In closing, the more people have guns, the more unsafe and dangerous the U.S. is going to be. If we lived in Patrick Henry's world, where the objective is that every man be armed and everyone who is able may have a gun, we would never feel safe in America.
Thank you. Were you able to print up that one that I responded back to you with?
I tried printing it, but it just came out just like that.
It didn't have the stuff highlighted with the questions?
When I tried printing it, it just came out blank.
Okay, I'll see what I can figure out. All right, at the start of the speech, you've got two claims. You need to pick one and make it the proposition. As you're speaking, I can pick out some secondary claims because you do use some numerical signposts on them, but there's no preview of that in the introduction of the speech, and so it makes it a little bit harder for the listeners. On the individual points, when you do signpost, I thought that they were pretty clear. The evidence that you use on some of the points needs to be expanded a little bit. There's a presupposition in a number of places that more guns is bad, and you know there's no data that talks about the relationship of or the percentage of gun ownership versus the amount of violence. The closest you get to something like that is the one statistic that talks about how having a gun in the home increases the risks to the people in the home, like 57% higher risk. Was it 57% or 57 times? I don't remember which it was, of being involved in a gun-related incident. And that's the closest you come to having something that really deals with the number of guns. It seems to be the presumption of the argument is that if we had fewer guns, we'd have less crime. But I'm not sure why that's the case, given any of the information you've got. You've got some criticism of the existing gun laws, and you say that they don't work. But I don't get any proof on it. I mean, the Brady Bill, you say, people still get guns, so it can't be working. Well, are the people who are supposed to be getting guns or not? And in fact, when you point out that most of the guns that are purchased by people who are committing crimes get them illegally, well, then that makes it sound like the laws are trying to prevent the people who aren't supposed to be getting the guns from getting them. So I'm not sure how that argument advances your position. You tend to look down a lot while you're speaking. You're reading all the time. You got to deal with those presuppositions, get a little bit more evidence on the relationship between the quantity of guns and the amount of violence that's going on. And like I said, I think that you could have used a little bit more preview. Thank you.